Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing another installment of a new series I'm doing called The Psychology of. Last time I did Loki, and this time I wanted to do Thanos because he's a very interesting character who is, I think, one of the best villains ever in cinematic history. So I'm going to be reading some different articles talking about the psychology of Thanos, and then at the end I might give a little bit of my take on it, what I think of those articles, and what my opinion of his character is. So this first article is by Ilio Martino. He's a PhD, and it's titled Thanos and the Banality of Evil. Could you become a monster? And warning, there's a lot of spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen Endgame or Infinity War, then I suggest you don't listen to this. Maybe go watch those and then come back. So, Avengers Endgame just smashed the box office records, in no small part because they created a villain worthy of the history books. What made Thanos a truly great archetypal villain was that he escaped the clutches of the mustache-twirling, two-dimensional, cliche villain. Instead, the writers managed to achieve something that appears to elude most other superhero movies. They held up a mirror to the audience and showed us somebody we could relate to. In short, they humanized him. There is something deeply uncomfortable about this that the writers have tapped into. Could any of us, given the right circumstances, become monsters? Putting someone in the slow cooker of pressure and time, can a dose of the right ideology, a dash of messiah complex, and the doubling down of one's own hero's journey create the perfect storm that history will qualify as evil? To answer these questions, we need to delve into Thanos' character arc and our own history. Thanos has permeated our collective consciousness to become a universal meme, likely to be held to the same level as Darth Vader if history looks favorably upon Marvel. In many ways, Thanos is on his own hero's journey we can all relate to as traditionally heroic. Thanos' goal is to end suffering across the galaxy. His ambitions are noble and pure, larger than himself, one he is willing to sacrifice everything for. This is perhaps the first telltale sign to us that something may be wrong. In order to sacrifice everything, others must also pay a price to achieve his vision. The parallels with collective ideologies in our own history begin to emerge. Communism had seemingly noble goals. It just cost millions of deaths, suffering, and absolute poverty to achieve these means. Would you be willing to sacrifice lives for the utopian dream? The second device the writers used to their credit was to avoid the well-trodden trope of fascist ideology. As a civilian, we are very vigilant toward fascist principles of supremacy. It's an easy, now cartoonish way to create a hated villain, a level they did not stoop to. Instead, they did something else deeply uncomfortable. They made Thanos plain fair. He does not discriminate. He is not governed by emotions, hatred, bigotry. He is governed by one simplistic rule. 50% of the galaxy will be culled so that the other 50% may thrive in peace. We can't mount cardboard cutouts to point fingers, nor can we brand him with a dirty title. We have to, yet again, swallow the uncomfortable truth that, in his own twisted way, this makes logical sense. His hero's journey is also about the greater good. He wants the stones, not for world domination, but to carry out his final solution, despite the cost to himself. He knows the stones will take a toll, even going so far as to walk the walk and take on the Avengers personally. He does not make others fight his battles for him. He takes this burden on himself. However, this is where the cracks in the veneer appear, as they do with every genocidal maniac. And we get to the heart of the matter, the Messiah complex. Once Thanos decided he was the savior of the galaxy, and that his thinking was elevated beyond what others are able to comprehend, he began that downward spiral, which has led leaders in our own history to conquer continents, wipe out civilizations, and commit atrocities, all in the name of the greater good. Thanos has a cross to bear. This makes him, in his mind, noble. After all, he has evidence he was right. After his world was destroyed by greed and the ever-poignant depletion of resources, he made a vow to make sure this never happens again. He has drunk his own Kool-Aid, as they say. This leads him onto his own twisted hero's journey of sacrifice and redemption, which only ends with the completion of his tasks or death. To his credit, Thanos lives and dies by the sword. He truly believes in his own mission. Indeed, he is the most dangerous type of villain, a zealot until the end. This type of detached, messianic philosophy, almost Zen-like, is captured with his actions. He intentionally lets individuals live during combat, even complimenting them during their attempts to kill him. He is somehow above those petty human emotions like anger. The inevitability of Thanos' arc, however, is where we begin to see true echoes of our own dictators responsible for genocidal campaigns that taint our socio-political history. Underneath the veneer of selflessness and dispassion, the cracks show the ugly truth when Messiah becomes God. Thanos best summarizes this with the following line in Endgame, not verbatim. "Before now I have killed dispassionately, but I will take pleasure in this. I can see now that wiping out half the universe will not work. I need to start again, and they will never know what I did." Now that his plan has been foiled, Thanos' narcissism, fear, and anger seep through. This small planet of individuals will never stop. They can't appreciate what he has done, or will do. They are stuck in their ignorance and self-absorption. Now his duty is clear. He, in all his wisdom, decides that the only option is to wipe out all life and create life that will appreciate the world he has gifted them. Not only that, Thanos is a vengeful god. His dispassion is replaced with seething anger, the same anger he probably felt when his former planet rulers did not listen to him. This reminder of an old trauma is the final crack in his veneer. Underneath is an angry, power-hungry man, his motivations fueled by his own insecurity, resentment, and rage. It is at this point we remember those scenes in which his armies slaughtered entire planets of people in his quest for his final solution before he had the power of the stones. It's now we remember that he brutally tortures his own daughter to gather information, and killing the other for the soul stone, losing all semblance of humanity and the importance of life to the greater plan. It is here we remember it's the same old issue we see in our own historical dictators, wrapped up in something more sophisticated. Thanos wrestled with his shadow and lost. Social psychology has led to some disturbing and yet fascinating traits about human beings that demonstrate beyond mere good or evil. Most of us will and can perform horrific acts given the right circumstances, ideology, and personal torment. From Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiment to Milgram's experiments investigating obedience to authority, which we continue to learn and develop new theories from, even the most seemingly decent human beings can commit atrocious acts. Whether we like it or not, our history is filled with human beings that have got simply lost along the way, trapped in their own torment or desires, either unaware of their own shadow and allowing it to consume them through projected hatred and anger, or who've become consumed by its power to make the changes which require others to lay down their lives in the altar of the ultimate good. People become consumed by a fear and sadness, which can lead to anger and resentment, and with enough power can lead to sinister acts. This could be a school shooting, so that others may feel one's pain, or given enough charisma, power, and ideology to genocidal acts to fulfill one's ambitions of narcissism and desire to play God. There is a deeply discomforting truth lying here. All of us have the potential to fall into this trap, to allow our deepest desires and insecurities to consume us. Combined with the right ideology of the greater good and the quest to be our own hero in our journey, we all can do terrible, awful things. This is what makes Thanos a great villain. So that was a really interesting article by Ilio Martino, PhD, and he's currently a registered psychologist working in private practice in Australia, and his writing explores confronting controversial areas of psychology. I thoroughly enjoyed that article, and it gives you a lot to think about, and I really do think that it's very accurate. I know that when I watched Infinity War, which was the first time that we really got to see Thanos, before we'd only seen a few clips of him, but it was the first time that we were introduced to him, and his character was so interesting to me because I didn't hate him like you should hate a character who's as horrible as him. And as he was talking about his own quest to save the universe, I found myself trying to think, what is wrong about what he's doing? Because it is seemingly helping the greater good. And normally, for a villain, it just pops out to you that this guy is evil. You can just tell about this character that he's a horrible person. But in the way that Thanos didn't show emotional hate towards the Avengers. He even complimented them. I think he even said something about how he admires them. It just made it really difficult to clearly say that this is a horrible person. But of course, what he's doing is wrong, and it's not his job to determine the futures of all of those people. So let's move on to another article. This one's another psychological look at Thanos. This one is by Dr. Craig Pullman, and it's called A Psychological Look at Thanos. Villains don't come any bigger. Thanos is a big villain, and a complicated one at that. So, just how villainous is he? So this one was made May 7, 2018, so this was before Endgame came out. This author does not know the outcome of how he devolved. His stature and physique are Hulk size. He commands the most expansive armies in the universe. His evil plans traverse light years. He's the protagonist in a historically huge box office smash, Avengers: Infinity War. Will Thanos ascend to the level of other monumental screen villains like the Joker in The Dark Knight, The Silence of the Lambs as Hannibal Lecter, and Darth Vader? He has a fighting chance, and I wouldn't have thought so too long ago. Thanos first appeared on screen in the mid-credit scene of 2012's The Avengers. He had a speaking part but was relegated to second-tier heavy in 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. He briefly reappeared in 2015's Avengers: Age of Ultron. That mid-credit cameo was significant in that it also showed his Infinity Gauntlet and confirmed speculation that he was playing a long game to garner the Infinity Stones and wield them to wreak havoc on the universe. All of which bored me. To be sure, I'm a big fan of Black Panther, for instance. I've admired the world building, how all the characters and storylines have interconnected. These movies have maintained an impressively high standard for action, humor, drama, and even romance. The strength of the MCU has been the heroes, including backstories and relationships. There have been some cool villains like Eric Killmonger, Loki, Red Skull, and the Vulture, but some duds like Whiplash, Malekith, and Abomination. So I wasn't expecting a lot from this Thanos guy, and his brief screen appearances didn't generate much momentum. Then the opening moments of Infinity War made it clear that Thanos was going to be the driving force in this blockbuster. Dispatching the Hulk established his physical prowess. His brief oratory began revealing his motivations. I know what it's like to lose, to feel so desperate that you're right, yet to fail nonetheless. It's frightening. Thanos epitomizes the adage about every villain believing he's the hero of his story. He wants to wipe out half the life in the galaxy. Now, as malevolent as the goal seems to us, he sees it as benevolent. He doesn't want planets to suffer from overpopulation and decay, as did his homeworld of Titan. In his eyes, the end justifies the means. Thanos is set up as the alpha villain of the MCU, the Avengers, the Guardians, and several other heroes align against him. But he's a complicated character. Just how villainous is he? Previously, I described my heroism quotient, HQ, and villainy quotient, VQ. I rate villains along 5 factors, 0 to 20, yielding a villainy quotient with a maximum score of 100. The factors are drawn from the thinking and research of Dr. Philip Zimbardo of the Stanford Prison Experiment and other experts on evil. The higher the VQ, the more diabolical the villain. So here's how I score Thanos. 1. Absence of typical moral restraints on actions. Anyone whose life work is mass murder can't have much going on in the way of morality, but Thanos' motivations have to be taken into consideration. When he was younger, he predicted the downfall of Titan and proposed killing half of the population to protect depleted resources. He felt so desperately that he was right, yet failed to convince others. His plan was cruel, but stemmed from merciful intentions. Maybe his most significant flaw is obsessive thought, clinging to this plan and not considering other ways of achieving salvation. In terms of morality, I'm giving him a 10 out of 20. 2. Degree of harm or damage done. This is an easy factor to score. Thanos maxes out with a 20 because his rampage spans the galaxy. He also takes out several superheroes along the way. 3. Track record of evil doing. Thanos also gets a 20 on this factor. With Titan in ruins, he amasses armies and followers, traveling from planet to planet to execute half of the population each time. This goes on for ages, long before the fully stoned Infinity Gauntlet enables him to achieve his aim with the snap of a finger. 4. Malice towards victims, intent to cause suffering. Here is where Thanos really starts to diverge from typical villainy. His evil plan is actually devoid of malice. He believes his half-purges save those left alive. Rather than intending to cause suffering, he wants to alleviate it. In Infinity War, Thanos is faced with a choice about whether to sacrifice a loved one to obtain one of the Infinity Stones. He makes that sacrifice, but his action is just that. He dreads his decision and mourns the loss. I'm going low here with a 4. 5. Taking pleasure in actions. Thanos has a bit of a martyr complex. He believes he's the only one doing what needs to be done. He's willing to kill, to be despised, and to lose those close to him. As self-righteous as he is, though, I'm still giving him 3 points on this scale, because he seems to take pleasure in a good fight. Sum these 5 factors and Thanos' VQ comes to a 57. That is not particularly high and similar to that of Shere Khan from the Jungle Book. In Thanos' case, though, a modest VQ makes him a more interesting villain. There are different angles to him. Getting back to my original question, achieving silver screen immortality as a villain does not necessarily require a really high VQ. Okay, so that was a psychological look at Thanos, Villains Don't Come Any Bigger, by Dr. Craig Pullman. So I think that was a really interesting look at this character, and I really recommend that you go and rewatch or watch for the first time the series and see what you think of Thanos and whether you think this was accurate or not. I think that both of those were very accurate to the impression that Thanos gives off and the way that his character was written, the types of things that he says, the way that he portrays the things that he so vehemently believes. And yeah, he's one of my favorite characters in the series, even though I don't agree with him on his way of going about it, and I don't agree with him on him playing God. I still think that he's a very, very interesting character, and kind of makes me want to watch the series again, even though I literally just watched it. So I hope that this was relaxing, and I hope that you got something out of it, and I can't wait for my next one. Give me some suggestions down below. I was thinking of possibly doing Bucky and seeing what psychologists think about his potentially PTSD and stuff like that, or if there's something else that he qualifies for in the DSM-5. But yeah, that was a thought. I am totally open to doing characters outside of the MCU. I was thinking of doing some book characters, so give me some suggestions and check out my other video about Loki. Hope that this was enjoyable,